everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. First one of August, and back with me, back in the out of the producer seat and back into the recording seat. Nate, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm all right, man. You know, I'm currently figuring out what's up with my lungs, and they think that at this point it's either a viral lung infection or I have wound up with some kind of environmentally induced adult onset asthma. So I'm on a steroid inhaler and doing some other stuff and waiting for some lab results. So unfortunately, that's why I haven't been on basically any shows recently. It's just that I I listened to some recordings that I did when it was really bad, when it first got like severe, and you could just hear how out of breath I was on those recordings. And it's like, yeah, it's just not good.
I had that Trump with COVID kind of look where you're just kind of wheezing and you're real sweaty and everything's just not, you just want to go lay down a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's weird is that I wasn't ever having a fever, and it wasn't COVID. Like I haven't tested positive for COVID this whole time. Obviously, I've had COVID before and the symptoms were different. It's just weird, but it's been an ongoing thing. It's kind of fucking up a lot of shit, with regard to plans. But unfortunately, it's just sort of just my luck, I suppose, that I lived in London it'll be 4 years at the end of this month. And London's notoriously terrible air quality hasn't affected me yet. But then a bug goes right in my fucking windpipe and into my lungs, and I just get London asthma.
You still got like a gnat stuck in one of your little lung pockets somewhere, and until you cough it out, it's just gonna sit in there walking around kicking shit up.
Yeah, man, I don't know what happened. I mean, so they put me on antibiotics at first, and it helped a little, but not anywhere near as much as it would if it had just been a bacterial infection. So there might have been a variety of things going on. And when I was in Switzerland, I was at first wasn't sleeping super well just because I was getting used to being in a different place. And the apartment that Cynthia's employer set us up in was like a hotel apartment situation. The blinds didn't work super well. So you'd better get to bed early because you're fucking waking up at 6 a.m. regardless. And so, yeah, when I got back from Switzerland, it really, really kicked in hardcore. And, before I'd been able to do athletic stuff normally and just, it was like, all right, be somewhat smart about it. But, you're going to cough a little, but you'll be fine. But trying to go running when I first came back from Geneva, it was extremely bad. Extremely. I finished a run and then I had to hang out in the shade. And when I walked home, I'm like, I hope I can find a route that has shade the whole way, because I feel like if I stick in the sun too long, I'm just going to pass out. And yeah, that's never happened to me before.
Yeah, I had that on a recent run too, because I was dumb and I was like, St. Louis went through a heat wave for a little over a week, and I was getting restless because I don't leave the house ever usually. So I went for a run and was 102 degrees outside, and I had that I can normally do 3 miles in perfectly fine conditions with that. I'm not marathoning it, but I can do it without stopping. And it gets hot enough, and I'm almost 40, dude. I can't be doing that shit anymore. And I'm sure that whatever lung nonsense you have going on is not helped by the fact that it's also been just absolutely sweltering in England the last couple of weeks.
I mean, okay, in a relative sense, yeah, for by British standards, I don't find it to be all that uncomfortable if it doesn't get above 30, which is about 86, I think. They start getting hot and bothered when it's over 26, which would be mid 70s, I think. Mm-hmm. Maybe high 70s, but 30 is above. It's into the high 80s or at least mid 80s, and it sucks. And we had it was almost 40 in London, so it was about 103. I think 40 is 104.5. It was 101 or 100 on the Monday of the big heat wave, and then on Tuesday it was 103 in London.
Yeah, and nobody owns a box fan in London, so it just makes
we do, but fuck, man, at a certain, also the one thing that was working in your favor is that when it's that hot in London, typically it's really, really low humidity. Mm-hmm. It was about 15% humidity at the hottest point of the day when we had that day when it was 40. And so you are able to evaporate cool, you know what I mean? So everything from putting a wet cloth in front of your fan to just the fact that if you take a cold shower, you'll actually feel better. mm-hmm. because of like stuff evaporating. It was actually shocking how quickly stuff evaporated. Like I would put a rag over the box fan in the room. Because obviously at that time of day, there's no point in having the box fan in the window, because why the fuck are you trying to, if you have a darkened room and it's like 85 degrees in the darkened room, why are you going to put air in when the air is 104? So we keep that room, keep the windows closed, keep the blinds closed, and that there was one room in the place that stayed pretty cool relative to the rest of the house. And we bought some blackout like vinyl stripping. It's like the width of a roll of wrapping paper, but it's this like adhesive black vinyl stuff that's like a blackout for your windows. And so doing that, helps keep the dark and keep it from getting super hot indoors. And so we blacked out some of our windows, and we just left that up. We'll take it down in the winter or in the fall when it cools off and you want more light in the house. But that helped a little.
Just put up black lights. You'll be fine. You got blackout. Just put out some black lights. Put like some Grateful Dead Peace Frog, the velvet paintings up.
I texted the photos of the windows to my mom, and I was like, your grandparents blacked out their windows because of the Nazis, and we're blacking out our windows because of the sun. And it's like, yeah, fair enough. But it was insanely hot. It's been really dry. It like hasn't properly rained here I think since May. Genuinely, it hasn't rained like in the way you would normally expect it to rain here. So on one hand, it's like really nice weather for doing shit outside. We've just like forgotten to take umbrellas with us because we just like doesn't matter. It doesn't rain. But like the park that's closest to us that Cynthia and I go running in, the grass is so dead, so dry from this that like it's the color of straw, fully like, not even yellow anymore. It just looks like white. And it smells like have you ever baled hay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know
I know
how
that.
Hay bales,
The hot inside of a barn.
Yes,
like that has no
inside
air conditioning.
A pole barn full of hay bales. Yeah, like that's what it smells like out in the park right now. And we were walking in a different park. We've made it now that we know we're going to be leaving the UK. We've been trying to go out on Sundays and either go to parks if the weather is nice or go to museums if the weather's not nice. And we went down to Crystal Palace Park in far South London. And it was funny because walking on some of those trails, which are sort of like improved dirt trails around the park, like it was kicking up a lot of dust with people walking just because it's so dry. And I was like, I'm having fucking flashbacks to Bragg right now. Like, this is just weird. Wouldn't expect this in a country this wet, rainy, and typically green year round.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about it. If I could have, I would have sent over the massive rain that we had that caused flash flooding all over the city. It seems like all the weather is just kind of shifting to places where it doesn't belong. Yeah,
my parents were saying they got hit pretty bad with rain, but they actually got it a lot less severely than other places in like Illinois and Kentucky and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of places in Appalachia are not doing well. So if you got a couple of extra bucks, there's plenty of places around that are needing help. I know the Trillbillies guys. I know Whitesburg has been hit pretty bad. St. Louis got fucked up pretty bad too. So it's welcome to climate change, I guess. We're all just waiting until we're the ones that are recording the local disasters on our phones.
Well, and that was kind of the case for us because there were fires that broke out in East London, like far outer ring East London, in like Barking, I think, like almost like the sort of London Essex border, and like a few blocks of houses, like neighborhoods worth of houses, like a street's worth, all burned down. Like, there were fires in some of the green spaces. Hussein said that one of the sort of like park/meadow areas, in the sort of London-Kent border, like where he lives, like part of the route he would normally drive on to get into the city were just all on fire. And thankfully it cooled off and there was some rain. Like it rained very briefly, but it rained enough to kind of put some of this shit out and cool off a bit. I think like that night and then into the early morning the next day. And it hasn't gotten that hot. I mean, I think the hottest it's gotten is like 29 since then. And it's been a lot cloudier, more often. But yeah, man, like there was this feeling of, I said this online, but I feel it too. It's like, this is only 2 days and this country is so close to shutting down already. Like if in Australia, when these kinds of heat waves happen, they last for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and there's brush fires and there's smoke. Like this country is not fucking prepared at all.
Well, here's the thing. And just like anything else, as it's going to keep happening and people are going to just learn to live with it. And then within a decade, everybody's going to be like, yeah, just parts of London burn down every year. It's fine. I mean, we all kept a stiff upper lip when it was the Nazis doing it. This
Right,
time
they're going to
just
compare it to the Blitz. Yes, they always do. They always fucking find a way
it's
to...
always going to be, back my grandfather survived the Blitz by going underground during the fires, I guess. I don't know.
My grandfather survived the Blitz and then was a raging alcoholic after and completely insane. Well, speaking of back in my day and back in my war, there's an interesting story that you've linked me to as regards a kind of niche thing in the U.S. military, the U.S. Army specifically, which is that when you and I were in, it was very common that we got overloaded with ribbons for our dress uniforms. We as a 7 years in service captain, I wound up with more ribbons than like my grandfather had after 33 years in the Army.
Yeah, it's chest candy, man.
Just insane chest candy.
I'm looking at I have 3, 6, 12, 13, 14 ribbons, but many of them are multiples too. So like really if I was to individualize each one, I would look like I just lost the war in Afghanistan myself. Look like one of our generals. Hell, dude, I have overseas training ribbons. They gave you a ribbon for doing a 2-week training literally outside of the United States, and I did that 3 times. So I get like this cool one that's got a little 3 on it.
I'm looking at my old dress uniform. I made the joke that the officer blues, which became the standard uniform, and now they're being replaced by pinks and greens, sort of World War II boomer nostalgia throwback uniform. When I look at my uniform from my last DA photo, I don't remember all of these, what they are, but yeah, I had 5 rows of ribbons. My dad, I think, had 2 rows of ribbons when he retired. I remember that one time we were looking at old photos of an EIB competition to like see how some of the lanes were done, because set stuff up for ourselves. And the only photos we had on the drive, the shared drive for the brigade, were EIB from like 2003. And so it was like all these guys who were like lieutenant colonels and full colonels who were like involved, like on the briefings and in and around shit. Those guys were like 20, 25 years in service, and they would have like 1 row of ribbons and an EIB, and that's it. And it's just like, yeah, very, very different experience if you were in the military at that time.
I don't even know what fucking half of these ribbons are. I can, off the top of my head, looking at it, I know maybe about half of them.
Let me see. I've got Bronze Star Medal, Archon with a couple of oak leaf clusters, the AAM, the Joint Services equivalent of an AAM with a couple of oak clusters, National Defense Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War and Terror Expeditionary Medal, Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal, and then like the basic ones, the NATO Medal for Afghanistan, the Korean Peninsula, whatever medal that you get for that. And there's one other that I really can't remember. And it's not the Good Conduct Medal, because they don't give that to officers, because we have to have perfect conduct, because no officer has ever done anything bad.
Do you guys have the Gay Pride ribbon?
Yeah. I've got the Gay Pride ribbon. The base layer, if you will. I think yeah. Okay, the one that I can't remember is, I think, the Army Service Medal, but I can't remember. And then obviously all the other stupid badges and tabs. Ranger, Pathfinder, Airborne, CIB. And my German Armed Forces whatever badge, the German sports badge, I've got that on the other side for my foreign award. So yeah,
So you've got, but I mean, those a lot of those are actually like impressive stuff, though.
No, getting a Bronze Star as an officer, unless it's with a V device for an actual encounter, that was just an end of tour award for like E7 and above. So that's the 4th highest medal, I believe, in the U.S. Army. But they made it a point to give it to you regardless for whatever as long as you weren't a complete. I mean, like, I knew officers who didn't get Bronze Stars for a deployment, but I'm going to be honest with you, like, some of it was just like their position and the person rating them was a dick, and some of it was like they just weren't good at their jobs.
We had a lieutenant who got an ARCOM at the end of our last deployment instead of the Bronze Star.
Not even an MSM. Wow.
No, dude, I've told this story about, like, first off, she that poor woman broke down into tears about that one. to be fair, she was a perfectly fine person, not a great fit for the military.
Sure.
But I was put in for an MSM, and fucking First ID downgraded all MSMs to RCOMs. It's like either it needs to be a Bronze Star or an RCOM. We're not giving out any MSMs. And then after I retired, my unit didn't give a shit about me and never put me in for an MSM there. So I'm a touch salty. One day I'm going to write a letter to one of my senators to demand an MSM, but we'll get there.
And you'll get a letter back from Josh Hawley written in blood about we must purge the woke from this land.
Exactly. I'm going to tell him that the woke First ID took my MSM. And then
yeah, I mean, I remember we were in a formation one time in the Q course, and some of the guys who had been in the 18 X-ray pipeline, like the way you could enlist to become a Green Beret, you have to go through basic and infantry AIT and airborne, and then a bunch of like prep courses, and then special forces selection, and then a bunch of other fucking shit, and then like a fake warrior leader course, like basic NCO course, and then you show up at the actual SFQ course. So we were in the SFQ course. These guys were all like E4s about to be promoted to E5 or E5 because it was just fast track guys to be NCOs. And the guys who had gotten like they were on the order of merit list, like the 1, 2, and 3 highest in the order of merit list for like the warrior leader course equivalent in the SF pipeline, all got RCOMs for the course. And I remember one of the guys in the formation who was ex-regular Army like me was like, "Oh, that's nice. They did good in a school. I got an RCOM for a 15-month deployment."
Yeah. There's no consistency on awards, especially like, I mean, shit. I remember after an annual training, one of my officers tried to give me an AAM, which is like the lowest medal you can get. I believe that like a captain can sign off on it, right? Like
AAM, I think you have to have it approved by a lieutenant colonel. I'm pretty sure an AAM you can recommend it at at any level, but it would typically be 05 approval authority or your battalion commander approval authority. Because I remember my battalion commander would sometimes be like, "Oh, I like this person. I'm just going to give them an AAM."
And it's a nice thing to get. Like if you have an extremely difficult annual training or any kind of field thing, it's a good and easy one to give out that makes the soldiers feel good. It's a lot more permanent than getting coined or whatever. But I had an officer try to give me an AAM for an annual training. I was like, "Dude, sir, I missed movement. I showed up 3 days late because I was too dumb to like know when my outgoing flight was. Don't give me a medal. That's fucked up. Like give that medal to somebody who like really deserves it." And like, to be fair, I do deserve all the medals because I was a very good soldier, regardless of politics aside. I was good at telling people what to do and them listening to me, which is the mark of any good NCO. But I don't know. I'm there is no consistency. Like I said, I missed out on that Bronze Star. Instead of going up to a Bronze Star, I missed out on it because somebody had been in the Army 6 months longer than I was, and the commander at that on that deployment came to me specifically. It was just like, "I'm sorry, this is how we have to do it. I don't want to do this. Here's the paperwork that I put in for you. Here's what ended up happening. I want you to know that we tried and we're getting shot down for it." So it was very nice that that at least was just like, okay, Major Martin does give a shit about me, at least somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, long time listeners to the show have heard this story and I won't tell it in detail, but that like I had a situation where a guy who I was a great NCO I worked with was E5 promotable, and he was getting put in for an end of tour award, and we had to basically get them to do an exception to grant him a Bronze Star. But I'm like, he had been serving in an E7/second lieutenant position the entire deployment as an E5 and then as an E6. And our battalion personnel officer pulled me aside, or NCO pulled me aside, and was just like, "What I need you to do is not submit his award yet. Wait until he pins E6. We'll submit it with a letter of lateness. It'll get approved. If I submit it for an E5, it will get categorically rejected, and then like we won't be able to submit it again for him." And I was just like, "But nothing's changed." And he's like, "Yeah, I know nothing's changed, but like literally they will not give a Bronze Star to an E5 unless it's a Valor Award. So regardless of him being qualified for it as an end of tour award, he can only get it once he's promoted with a letter of lateness." And he's like, "I'll make sure it gets done." And I was like, "All right, roger that, Sergeant, move out, etc., chill." But Yeah,
The classism built into like just awarding medals is just so fucking weird.
And that's one of those things where I always find it funny because in some states you can get like Bronze Star winner custom plates for your car and shit.
Yes.
And that's one of those things where I remember being in the, various Army courses at the Captain's Career Course or the Q course and seeing like the officers who had done that, typically driving fucking huge trucks. And I just remember thinking like, man, unless that's got a V device on it, like that's pretty fucked. And like, even if you did, like, wait till you're retired, man, come on. Like, this is just some pogue shit, but...
Yeah, it's your personality. It's like putting your national defense...
Whom among us is going to stop the pogues from poguing out, like... Anyway...
Look, I'm not gonna front. Once upon a time, I had an Army license plate, but it's because I could get it. It was like $25, and I could get it customized. Which I was really big into Doctor Who at the time, so I had it a license plate that said Dalek, which was fun until that car got stolen and dumped out over on the east side. But
that was universal justice for you having such a goddamn.
It kind of was, and it's also like it was, when describing it to the cops, they're like, "Do you know the license plate?" And then having to explain it, and then explain why it's that. And then the 2 to 3 seconds of silence that happens on the phone as the cop is sitting there processing.
Calling all cars attention on you. We have a fucking nerd on site.
Yeah, a bolo on this fucking nerd ass car out there.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, you know what? I'm not gonna say it got me out of anything either. My military ID has gotten me out of a few tickets, I'm sure.
It's funny because your military ID can get you out of shit unless you live in a military town in which it gets you out of nothing. But that's a story for a different day.
They will fucking hate you more if you try to pull that shit in Fayetteville.
Yeah, or in Anchorage for that matter, which isn't necessarily a military town by default, but has such a massive military presence. I look back at this stuff and I feel like we'll read this story, but there is a huge amount of built-in classism and sort of rank-having privileges, and so I would just say, I'm always really skeptical of people who want to wear their ribbon rack on their cars, on their sleeves, on their whatever, because the ribbon rack stuff and like the way it's awarded, it sucks. Like some people get really fucked out of things. It's really arbitrary, and like I don't necessarily think it confers anything. I mean, it's pretty hard to get a DSC or a Silver Star. God knows it's hard to get a Medal of Honor without there being a pretty decent amount of vetting involved with the situation. But at the end of the day, most of the awards, and quite frankly, Bronze Star, unless it has the V device on it, like Bronze Star with V or Archon with V, like those are legit. Yeah, like you don't get those unless you were actually doing shit for fucking real. The ethics of the conflict you're in completely notwithstanding,
right?
Like you don't get those awards unless you're in the shit. So those are different, but there's a lot of kind of like clouding it. And there was for a time a default service medal. You get a GWOT service medal because you served during the time of the Global War on Terror. However, according to Jeff Shogel from Task and Purpose, headline: "The Global War on Terrorism Service Medal will no longer be a freebie." For the past few decades, the GWOT Service Medal has been the one military award that just about all service members could expect to receive, regardless of whether they fought terrorists or not. I'm so irritated. I didn't want to go into this hating on Jeff Smeagol. I really didn't. I wanted to just pretend I'd never heard that name before, but just that paragraph, man, they fought terrorists. Like, man, I fought my own fucking dick in the Porta-John more than I fought terrorists. Come on.
I fought people on my own side more than I fought anybody else. any anti-American whatever is going on. I got shit on more by my own by soldiers around me.
I got shot at, I got mortared, I got rocketed, all that shit. Like, but fuck, man, like, hate this so much. I fucking hate this. Anyway, established in 2003, the medal is meant to recognize all active duty, National Guard, and Reserve service members mobilized since September 11th, 2001. In essence, the military has given the award to service members who have served on active duty for 30 consecutive days or 60 non-consecutive days, making the medal just as ubiquitous as safety belts, chewing tobacco, rippets, and other hallmarks of the global war on terror. But the times they are changing, and soon far fewer troops will be eligible for the award. Starting this September 11th, only troops who spend at least 30 days assigned to a unit taking part in a dedicated counterterrorism operation will be eligible to receive the GWOT Service Medal, said Army Major Charlie Dietz, a Pentagon spokesman. That means service members will have to deploy on orders for a designated counterterrorism operation, or they will have to directly support such an operation on a full-time basis while assigned to an organization conducting a counterterrorism operation to get the award. Quote,
so you got to actually deploy now.
Yeah, I mean,
something.
Deploy, mobilize, whatever. I suppose they could do some bullshit National Guard thing where they're like, oh yeah, the border thing is an anti-terrorism mission where they fucking give guys that, but who knows? Quote, DOD made the decision based on the withdrawal of U.S. combat troops from Afghanistan and the mission in Iraq now being advise, train, assist, and to conduct counterterrorism missions as they arise, Dietz told Task and Purpose. Because operations in Iraq have ended, the Inherent Resolve campaign medal has only been available to U.S. troops serving in Iraq since July 1, Dietz explained. Those American service members deployed to Iraq for Operation Inherent Resolve can still win the GWOT Expeditionary Medal. For most U.S. service members, the changes to the GWOT medal's criteria will mean that their ribbon racks will be a little lighter, but that's not an entirely unwelcome development. In an October 2021 commentary for Task and Purpose, Marine veteran Austin Dahmer argued that it was time for the military to stop awarding the medal in part because the massive counterterrorism and counterinsurgency campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq had ended. Quote, by ending the practice now while the military and the larger national security establishment are still mostly in the moment of strategic inflection, it can preserve what honor and significance remains intrinsic to the GWOT service medal, to the GWOT service medal for those who've earned it, and show all the 19-year-old Marines, sailors, soldiers, airmen, and guardians that they face new challenges in the defense of the nation, unquote, Dahmer wrote.
See, this guy
the second
says
most disturbing thing that someone named Dahmer has written.
This guy's calling out, Iraq and Afghanistan, but the first word in GWOT is global. So, I mean, aren't we all fighting terrorism every day by going out and consuming and paying taxes? I think so. I think you, the listener, deserve a GWOT as well.
Yes, you deserve a GWOT. You get the GWOT Expeditionary Medal because you went to Black Friday and what award that is.
The next care package I send out, I'll send everybody a GWOT ribbon, and they can all be. I'm going to send everybody some Valor next one. So $10 a month, you get some Valor this time coming through.
This is annoying, so I won't finish it. But basically, yeah. Okay.
When
cool.
When are we going to stop giving out the National Service Defense ribbon? That's my question.
Because that's the three, right? That was I didn't recognize them all when I looked at that picture of my old DA photo, but yeah, it's the National Defense Service Medal, the Army Service Medal, and the Global War on Terror Service Medal, and then you get the Expeditionary Medal if you've deployed, even if you've deployed to a non-combat zone or a place where you wouldn't consider a combat zone. Like if you got deployed to, actually I guess it doesn't really count, does it? Because like I would say if you deployed to Kyrgyzstan, but then Kyrgyzstan is technically a combat deployment for the Air Force because they're pogues. And I think Kuwait technically counts because a lot of people who never went to Iraq or Afghanistan still got their sort of like bullet point, block check for having been in a combat zone because they went to Kuwait.
You know what they did is they got on a helicopter and flew like to Basra and walked around Basra for a while and flew back to Kuwait. And they said, "Look at me, I went to Iraq, so give me the
there's people
medals."
who were in Qatar and Bahrain as well, and those definitely weren't combat zones, but they were part of CENTCOM. So I think you get the Expeditionary Medal for that. And then if you did go to Afghanistan, for example, you got the NATO medal and the Afghanistan campaign ribbon. I don't know if there was an additional medal on top of the Iraq service ribbon because I never went to, I keep saying Iraq. I don't know if there was another medal on top of the Iraq service ribbon because I never went to Iraq, but
there was a thing. I don't have the Afghanistan campaign medal because I went in 2004 and it didn't exist at that time, but I have like another expeditionary medal. I think it's the one that's on the left in this picture. That counts.
I don't know. Maybe they should just give you a blank thing like a loot box, and it just like randomly selects one ribbon from eligible ribbons for your branch of service. So like, yeah, you push it, and it kind of like blinks through all the options, and you wind up with like the Antarctica Service Medal or something like that.
Yeah, it just drops out like a Vietnam service ribbon. It's
cool. The POW medal, but awarded because you were held in a POW camp in Switzerland. Like shit along those lines. You know what's funny? There actually is a story of some World War II veterans because Switzerland was neutral in the war. But there was a particular camp that was run by this Swiss army officer who was like an extreme Nazi sympathizer. And they treated American and Soviet prisoners so insanely badly that like 50, 60 years after the war, like it was genuinely in maybe even 70 years after the war, because there were very few guys who were still alive when this happened. They wound up being given the POW medal, even though technically speaking, being a POW, you would have to be a prisoner of a hostile nation. But they did an investigation. They're like, no, that camp in Switzerland was so fucked up. They might as well have been held. In fact, they probably would have been better treated in Nazi Germany than they were in Switzerland. Like really, really intensely insane shit they were doing to these guys. Like massive content warning here. They would, I mean, beyond the usual, like no blankets, no beds, no food, no sanitation, they basically would pick like people if they thought they had attitude, they would basically throw them into a pen of hardened prisoners and just have them all rape them and stuff like that. And this is Switzerland. This is, very notionally civilized, neutral, excellent prowess in, watchmaking and chocolate and financial crime, Switzerland. But yeah, they wound up actually giving these guys the POW ribbon for being held in a neutral, unaffiliated country because the treatment they received was so bad. So yeah, like the ribbons do notionally supposed to mean something, but I just there's a part of me that's just sort of like, I don't want to be a hater. I don't want to be a hater. For the record, I am not being a hater, but there's a part of this where I'm just like, man, who gives a fucking shit? Like really, who gives a shit? Like, it's a ribbon. It's just a default ribbon that you get. Like, I don't know. It was weird. It was weird because, when in the advent of like the Velcro shit and the pin-on ribbon badges or pin-on skill badges, if you wanted to, you could just not wear your stuff. If you wanted to, you could just show up. If you wanted to, you could just show up and unless your unit like mandated you had to, you could. I did this sometimes in Korea, and it was sort of fun to see the way people treated me differently. I would just show up with, as a captain with my unit patch and my rank and my name tapes, and that was it. No skill badges, no combat patch, no ranger tab, nothing. Just like, hey, what's up? Just me. I'm just a captain. Hey, what's up, guys? And then I'd show up, with all the stuff on it. We're like, oh, fuck. And it's just like, bro, just treat me like the person that you treated me like yesterday when I didn't look like I was decked out in fucking chest candy.
Yeah, I'm still the same jackass as before. Yeah, like I said, I don't even know. Like, I know one of mine are like overseas service ribbons, which is and then
right.
Sorry, not
that
even
might have
overseas
been one of the
service.
ones that I missed. Yeah, because I had a bunch of those. Because Alaska counts for an overseas service ribbon, hilariously.
Well, this is so overseas. It's non-CONUS training, I guess. So there's just a lot of stuff that they give out, and like honestly, when I was building my rack, like, and this was years ago, the last time I had to wear my dress uniform. But as I'm building my rack and my somebody is helping me out, and they're we're flipping through paperwork on DD-214s and everything, and they're like, okay, you got this, and you're building it on the computer and everything. I'm like, I don't even know when most of this shit was given to me, but like some of it is just like you were in the Army Reserves and you get good conduct, you were in for this long, you did this, you did that, like just like existing in the military gets you ribbons now. And like I'm
in the Army, specifically in the Army, because I feel like the Marine Corps really doesn't do this. Like, if I understand correctly, they don't have an equivalent to the combat infantryman's badge, for example. They have like a combat service ribbon or something along those lines. But the requirements to get it are more strictly observed than they were. Because for combat infantryman's badge, for example, or the combat action badge, you actually had to have, like, at a certain point, they stopped just kind of giving it out as an end of tour award based on your MOS. And you actually had to be in contact. You had to be in a fire being exchanged kind of situation, or getting blown up, or getting mortared, or something along those lines. Like there were a decent chunk of guys from my unit who didn't get their CIBs, even though we were an airborne infantry unit, because they weren't in any contact from the area where they were in that part of the province was just like pretty chill, and they did a lot of patrols, but they never took contact. And so, whereas I got mine. I remember I hadn't put in for one. Like, I'd been in some shit, but I hadn't put in for it because I had been putting in my junior soldiers who were there with me, and I was just being the witness, like doing the witness statement for theirs. And I talked to my new company commander, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I could probably put it in. He's like, well, don't be in too much of a hurry. He's like, I definitely got mine, but like 3 of my guys died the day that I got mine. And I was like, yeah, that fucking sucks, doesn't it? And then the day I got mine, we unsuccessfully provided medical aid to like a 14-year-old kid with a head injury who wound up dying from it. And so it was like, yep, I definitely got fucking shot at a lot that day. But then they brought this kid over and they're like, can you help us? And we tried, and we couldn't get them to medevac him because from our assessment of his injuries, they were like, he is 100% gonna he's gonna die. Like it's what do they call it?
Expectant.
Expectant, yeah. And obviously you don't want to fucking hear that ever. And God knows I fucking fought to try to get a medevac, but they didn't give it, so he wound up dying. So like, yeah, sick. I've got the fucking rifle in a box with some goddamn oak leaf clusters on it, but it's like the worst day of my life.
Sure.
So it's like, sick, you get a fucking medal for the worst day of your life. Hell yeah, I'm going to wear that shit everywhere I go. I'm going to get one of these fucking Vietnam vet hats with it on. So I'm going to be like, ask me about this medal. It sucked.
Yeah, ask me about the time that I almost died, but instead somebody else did.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where like a bullet missed me by, let's say, about 5 feet, but then also I was unable to save an innocent civilian who was blown up in a suicide bombing.
Right.
Which was targeting us. So while, if you want to wash your hands of it, be like, oh, it wasn't like he was injured by coalition troops. It's like, no, but they were trying to kill us and they killed him instead. So yeah, like, how is that any fucking different?
Yeah, it's there's levels of blame here, but obviously us being there certainly not helping any kind of situation.
No, if we weren't there, we wouldn't have been a target. There was no point of us being there, and like that kid would still be alive. So yeah, like it sucks, man. It fucking sucks. So like a lot of that stuff about the ribbon game, like, and award stuff in the military, Valor Awards, things along those lines. I look back on it and it's just like,
I know that this has been a thing that's really only happened in the last 20 years where like ribbons really have been, kind of handed out more and more. And I think that like one of the problems that this creates is that much like me, a 20-year veteran, I have no idea what most of these are. People just they were just put on there. So like, what's even the point of these ribbons? Like I have ribbons that are just like, yeah, I went to Japan for 2 weeks and I get a ribbon for it. And then you've got like, oh, I, got shot at and this kid died. And I got an award on that day too. Mm-hmm. Like, it just really seems like there's no,
but also again, I have a ribbon because I ran a bar on post in Honduras and we used the money to help fund a like meals program for a local orphanage, and that was enough to get me a military outstanding volunteer service medal. So like,
see, so that's a good one. You should put that one on the back of your
the back of my F-250. Yeah, exactly. We always used to joke about that, like the Pogues who would do that stuff, who would slap a CI. I mean, okay, an infantry guy slapping a CIB thing on the back of his truck is a Pogue move, regardless. And friend of the show, John Matrix, said this once, and I genuinely agree with it. That like in the taxonomy of being a Pogue, the only thing above all Pogue MOSs, the Poguest, most Pogue, transpo, reservist, whatever, food service, fucking pat clerk, the only person more Pogue than that is infantry guy who never deployed. Mm-hmm. And so slapping a CIB or an EIB on the back of your truck, yes, that's that huge Pogue move even from an infantryman. And a cab, same thing, combat action ribbon or combat action badge, which is for the for non-infantry MOSs who are in combat. Like if you're a transpo guy and you get blown up, you get a bayonet in a box with a grenade and an oak leaf cluster, and that's your award. But yeah, like of all of that stuff, I feel like slapping military stuff on your truck, Pogue move, regardless, doesn't matter. Slapping a Ranger tab on your truck, Pogue move. I'm sorry, but it is Pogue. Slapping a Special Forces tab on your truck, incredible Pogue move there, Quiet Professional. So yeah, like I've got my own theories on this, but we used to joke that the only acceptable thing that you could do would be, what if you slapped a Good Conduct Medal ribbon on the back of your truck? That would be very, very funny. Like in the same vein that like Army stickers aren't good or cool or funny unless they've been modified, and then they're very funny. Like I had a soldier who got one of those rows and stems things, says Army Wife, the toughest job in the Army, and then he took a razor blade and cut it so it just said Army, the Army. That is extremely funny. I had another soldier who found these stickers at the Alaska State Fair that said Alaska Girls Kick Ass, and bought 2 of them and cut it up with a razor blade so he could then slap it together in his truck and say Alaska Girls Lick Ass. And I was like, you're a genius. That's why you're a parachute rigger, because you're so good with your hands and you're so insightful. You see little opportunities to fix things, like you're a genius. I respect that. But like anything, for lack of a better word, hua, is Pogue shit. It's just Pogue shit. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah,
yes,
everybody who goes and like gets excited to shop in that aisle of clothing and sales or the PX, you know the one I'm talking about, the one that's got like the K-bar hatchet that like nobody ever actually needs. Like, this is a war hatchet. Okay, I shoot a gun. And I don't understand what I'm going to do with a war hatchet or like a this is a war machete. Okay, I'm not in the fucking Congo though. Like, this is a desert. What do I need to cut down with this?
The only aisle of military clothing sales that I enjoyed being in is the one with the new whoobies in it.
Yes.
So it's like, ooh, they're all soft and clean.
Yeah, you kind of like, you hug like a bunch of whoobies to you at the same time. It's like the closest to heaven you'll ever feel in the military.
Hey, we actually should probably explain that, because I feel like so much of our audience aren't military or aren't American military. So in the olden days, there was this, one of the ways in which you sort of stayed warm in cold weather was, or at least when you were bivouacking, was you have your military poncho, like your hooded poncho, but there also was a poncho liner, which is, it's got little tie downs on it, little strings like ribbons that you can use to tie it to the inside of your poncho. So it was intentionally, it was designed to be worn under the poncho as like an insulation layer. So it's like a synthetic fiber, kind of like silky feeling synthetic fiber down blanket, but it's like a very lightweight down blanket. And it's the only thing in your military basic issue that elicits positive memories, because the whoopee, as we call it, like a child's word for a safety blanket, is, you know, when you're getting to rack out, when you're getting to, you know, go to bed, whatever, when you're in the field and you're off fire watching, you wrap up in your whoopee, like you have nothing but positive associations with that fucking whoopee. And
it means comfort. It means rest. It means, you know, you get to take a couple minutes. It's the whoopee is like the most comfortable thing that anybody in the military has ever given you. And
aside from the Equix 7-layer system with the marshmallow suit, but you're never allowed to wear that. No one will ever let you wear the marshmallow suit. So like, it's just dangled in front of you and then pulled away with like utmost cruelty, because the military has to suck. I would also say the smoking jacket. You're familiar, I presume, with the smoking
Yes.
jacket. In the olden days, before we had the 7-layer system and all this fucking crazy shit, you had like a heavier overcoat, like a parka, and it was just a cloth parka. It was like kind of thick ripstop cloth, or thicker like BDU cloth, but it had buttons inside it, and you could attach what is basically like a down jacket liner, like the same cloth as the whoopee, but it cinches in, it pops in with these buttons, and so you wear it like a shirt inside, and basically like it would add an insulating layer to that parka. So in super cold weather, I mean, in retrospect, it's fucking insane how cold shit gets where we train, and we send these guys out, we're like, you got a little insulating layer, and you have some wool liners for your fucking leather gloves, you'll be fine. And it's like they wonder why so many guys got frostbite. But we called it the walking whoopee or the smoking jacket. Also, one of the rare things that you have a positive association with.
And now this isn't the field jacket though, which is a completely different thing.
Or is it? Field jacket liner. Yeah. I mean,
okay, yeah.
But now we have the Gore-Tex, because this was pre-Gore-Tex when these things came out. Like these came out in like this. They may have been around for before, but the sort of last iteration of them that I saw them being made and issued to people was like the tail end of the BDU era. So once the global war on terror happened, they started making like, you know, appropriating or refashioning like hiking, climbing, mountaineering gear stuff for the military. And so you started having like Gore-Tex layers and base layers and like removable layers for things. That's why when I said the Equix, the extreme cold weather clothing system, the 7-layer set was like base layers and like thin waffle top and bottom, and then like thicker waffle top and bottom, and then like there was a heavier jacket, and then there was like an over regular insulated like over jacket, or like non-insulated, non-Gore-Tex, and then you actually had Gore-Tex top and bottom, and then you also had the marshmallow suit, which is like this solid gray, looks like the Michelin Man puffy coat suit and trousers. They're so comfortable. It was a walking sleeping bag. And as you can possibly imagine with the U.S. military and the way it works, it looks comfortable and it kind of looks cool. So you are never allowed to wear it.
But you got to carry it. You got to bring it with you to the field.
Oh, you better fucking bring it, because you're financially on the hook for it. And chances are good, like, I don't recall our unit ever doing inventories where, unless we were doing cold weather training in Alaska, where you had to show it. Like you were told, bring your, waffle top and bottom, silk top and bottom, regular top, like outer Equix top and bottom, and then Gore-Tex top and bottom, and that was it. And and then you had the gray fleece that you could wear, and we were allowed to wear those in Korea, but you had to wear them under you're the one with all the name tapes and shit, like your regular Equix top. So, God, dude, it fucking winter gunnery in Korea when it was like 0 Fahrenheit. I can recall I started out like, yeah, you only really need silks and Gore-Tex on top and you'll stay warm. And then by the end of it, I was wearing like both waffle tops and the fucking fleece. And I was just like, I want to be warm.
Yeah, the army really like teaches you what extreme temperatures are, and like especially in California when I had to go to not NTC but Fort Hunter Liggett, and just like out on this like wide open prairie that we were on, and you wake up and it'd be fucking 35 degrees, 40 degrees, no heat or anything in the tents because dumb private didn't fill up the generator, so it's cold as shit, and then it's like 90 degrees by the end of the day. And you're just like, what the fuck? I've never, only in the United States Army and only in Wisconsin have I seen a training day have both hot and cold weather injuries, which is just an absolute fucked thing to do. And, it wasn't extremes, but it was enough. And that's why I don't do the Army thing anymore. There's multiple reasons I don't do the Army thing anymore, but holy shit, I like to be comfortable now.
I really don't like being uncomfortable. And I would also say I still do outdoor stuff because I cycle commute year round here. So I have to have winter weather stuff. And I have actually saved some of my old Army stuff, like base layer things, the silk top and bottoms, the stuff that touches your skin, like lightweight base layer.
That stuff's great. Yeah.
The waffle top, I've still got one of those. And I have a Gore-Tex coat from Caramore, which is like a British sportswear brand. And so in my winter configuration is basically the Caramore Gore-Tex jacket and the silks. And if it's actually still colder than that, I have like a slightly warmer civilian base layer thing that's like a little thicker. Or I wear the silks and the waffle top and then the Caramore jacket. But honestly, it doesn't really get below freezing here. So like, yeah, you're moving, like 15, 20 miles an hour on a bike. So you do want it to be like somewhat windproof, and like you are going to get cold in places where like your skin's exposed. But I don't need that like high speed shit because it's not like -70 and I'm not in the helicopter or some bullshit. So
I've dealt with that one before. my first time on a Chinook in Afghanistan and going up into the mountains, and nobody was just like, hey, you know how it's hot down here where you're at? It's actually really cold up there, so you should wear some stuff before you get on that helicopter. I was very cold.
Yeah, you definitely get some extremes. I want to say being OPFOR at NTC when it was like 116 in August was the hottest I ever saw. It got almost that hot in Afghanistan, but not quite where I was. I know in southern Afghanistan it gets way hotter. And then coldest I ever saw, obviously Alaska, was like -37 one night. But fuck, dude, it gets so cold in Korea and so hot in the summer. Like,
just enough moisture that it's there, but it's not enough to coalesce into rain.
We make the joke that Korea. It's like being inside a human mouth, but Korea in August is like being inside a human mouth, but that person has got a fever. Like, it sucks. So, yeah, not a place you want to train at. Anyway, we're getting to the end, so I was going to say, Francis, you guys did a bonus. You and Shocks did a boat-centric bonus about the HMS Captain, and I've got a cut of that I'm going to play as a preview of bonus content, but maybe you should introduce it.
Yeah, I brought Shocks on. Shocks is always on. Joe was in the middle of fleeing the country for tax reasons, I'm going to assume. And so I discovered this boat, this ship called the HMS Captain, that was at the time the biggest naval loss of the British Navy. It killed 500 people through politics, bad boat design, and not having a lot of government oversight. So, the things that generally kill a lot of people in the military, basic incompetence of everybody in charge. So I hope you enjoy this. And I'm going to be reading a little bit from this thing called the Macmillan Magazine. Macmillan's Magazine was just kind of a periodical that came out during the time that had various things like engineering stuff in there. Yeah, at the time, like you didn't have magazines that were necessarily completely devoted to like guns and ammo and Oprah or things like that. You had like, do you want to write for this thing? Do you have something to write for this? Cool. So Macmillan's was one of those at the time. But there's this article written in one of them from volume 22. It's called The Loss of the Captain by J. Scott Russell. J. Scott Russell is, and this is all written after the Captain ended up sinking and everything. Spoiler alert. This does not go well for the boat.
Oh, weird. The like sophomore effort of weird designer like working out of his shed didn't turn out great. It's strange. I don't know. It's the first time that's ever happened before.
Whom's could have seen it coming?
Yeah, I mean, like certainly we've never learned about like different firearms or other things that like someone designed in their basement that didn't work out too well in practice.
I mean, the last gun that somebody designed in their basement managed to pull off a political assassination. So
anyway, guys named Abe who are leaders of country, currently going 0 and 2. So we got that going.
Jesus Christ. At least this one wasn't currently sitting at a play.
I mean, I guess he wasn't currently the prime minister either. So I mean, which I can't decide if that makes it better or worse. Like, imagine getting shot in your retirement. It's a fucking.
I think that's what. Yeah,
it's a fucking kick in the ass right there.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, just getting shot in general would fucking be a kick in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem great. I'll be honest.
So J. Scott Russell, if you're a physics nerd, you'll probably know that name. He's like one of the fathers of fluid dynamics. He's one of those people that who lived on the ocean and watched the ocean and was able to figure out a lot of physics behind how the ocean moved, how like boats and ships of various sizes, various keels coming into these areas is a nerd, I guess. But the guy who again is the father of a lot of physics that we know currently. So he wrote this whole thing. And there's a lot of it's a Google book. I found it fairly easily. I found it very funny to read because he is very pissed off at everybody who is involved in this because basically his thing is anybody could have seen that this was not going to work. And I don't understand why you fucking dumbasses let this happen.
It's like what is it, was it Sweden where they like launched the boat that immediately just sank because like everyone had like designed it but no one had actually modeled to see if not it would actually float, and it just they launched the motherfucker and it just immediately went down.
You gotta hire somebody who knows. See, this is why you should, if you got boat questions, go to Carrie. Don't come to me. I don't know. I'm launching a Swedish boat that's going to the bottom. He'll maybe be able to tootle around the bay or something. All right. So from Loss of the Captain, and he breaks this down into here's the things that we're going to cover in here. And the first one that they're trying to cover is the origin of this great naval experiment. And he starts it with the costly experiment has had its origins precisely in that body, which will now be the first to repudiate all responsibility. There has been long in the House of Commons a turret ship party, and the construction of the turret ship Captain under the superintendence of Captain Cowper Coles was the culmination of success for the crowning glory of that party. For many years, they have been in the habit of vilifying the performance of every ship in the Royal Navy which was not turret ship of this sort. And after many years of indefeatable perseverance, they compelled a reluctant admiralty to sanction and authorize the construction of the Captain. And the party cheerfully voted from the public funds a few £100,000 necessary to carry out their favorite experiment. So basically, they just trash talked the military until the admiralty was like, "Here's £300,000, go away."
Which I mean,
and it worked.
Which I mean, kind of sounds quite honestly like most military bidding at this point, anyway.
Exactly. They're just a lot of shit talking, and eventually Parliament was like, "Fine, we'll give you your money." Now, again, Captain Coles, not a shipbuilder. He's a weapons builder. He figured out turret guns, but he is not a shipbuilder whatsoever. And for that reason, he decided that he was going to go ahead and do his own thing and start designing the HMS Captain. Now, I also want to be clear. they have working prototypes of turret guns. They know that this works. But the ships that they practiced on, they're like, we're just going to put one turret on it and sail it around. It's going to be coastal defense, and it'll be fine. Now, if you think about all of those warships that you would see while watching Master and Commander or whatever, you will notice that they have many more than one cannon. So the first thing Coles thinks is like, well, first off, we got to get more cannons on this thing. So he's like, first off, I want to put 4 turret guns on here, but inside of 2 turrets. So they have 2 guns inside of 2 turrets on their own. That can
the old
point out both.
The old 2-gun 1 turret. Yeah,
exactly.
I've seen that video on the internet.
Yeah, which once again defeats the fucking purpose. Now you have 4 guns, but 2 can shoot one way and 2 can shoot another way. Now, granted, they are easier to aim and everything, but you're still down. You're still down to 4 guns, and these aren't easy to move. Like it's not like it's a trained crew would, like, if they shot and they needed to reposition, it could take 5 to 10 minutes.
Well, I was going to say, are they
re-aim.
They're like hand cranking this shit around, right?
If they're lucky, yes.
Yeah.
Some of them are having to push it. And we're talking about, like, these turrets with the guns in them, we're talking about 12 to 22 tons, depending.
Oh, that's
so fine. Yeah, that's very heavy. So now, if you were ever in the military in the last 10, 15 years, and they talk about the MRAPs, the biggest problem with the MRAPs is they roll over because they're really fucking top heavy. So let me tell you something about putting gigantic guns up on a top deck. It's going to make your fucking ship real top heavy. So the plan was, well, instead of having, we don't need all of that bullshit area that has the, where we would put our broadside guns now, right? So let's just lower the deck. Just lower it down way closer to the ocean. We'll put it down to about 8 feet high from the ocean. Carrie, does that sound like a good idea?
No. I mean, like, as someone who's gone out in, like, 15 to 20 foot waves, putting your beam of a boat about, like, 8 feet above the ocean doesn't sound like a great idea.
Yeah, and really it came to about 6.5 feet after they put all the turrets and shit on. And also all of the steel reinforced masts that they had to use to sail this fucking thing around. Because, well, they did have kind of a smaller, like, mast area. They didn't have all the the fore, the aft, all the sails and bullshit. They managed to figure out how to get something smaller, but they wanted to reinforce it because it's a warship, so they slapped a bunch more steel onto it. Just armor everything up.
Which is also like, I know one of the reasons why they ended up doing standard equipment lists on Coast Guard cutters was because they had an issue where over time they would their performance would degrade because too many extra parts ended up getting loaded aboard the ship. Because
exactly.
Because they'd be like, oh, well, we'll have an extra reduction gear and we'll have an extra engine block and we'll have this and that and the other thing, and, like, which is fine in a vacuum, but over time it adds so much extra fucking weight that you're just like, you end up like, your top speed might have been 26 knots and now you're doing maybe 21.
Yeah, you're really dragging ass in the ocean.
Yeah, and, like, similarly, I can only imagine that, if you're just like, oh, we'll armor this and we'll armor. I mean, there's a reason why, ship construction in, like, the 20th century ended up doing, like, we're either going to do armored everything or we're going to do, like, armored a couple things and let everything else essentially just be, like, thin plate steel, because you can't have it both ways.
Exactly. Same thing. Like, if you've ever been, like, had to fly in a small airplane, which I've had to do way too many times, like commercial, and then the stewardesses will come in and start making people, like, move because they're like, we need to counterbalance the weight. I'm like, I'm not comfortable with that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not comfortable with that at all.
I went to was it Culebra off of Puerto Rico once, and it was like a flight from, like, San Juan to the island. It was a small airstrip, and you get there and it's just small prop plane, and, like, they do the same thing. They're like, sorry, so they, like, weigh all your bags and shit. And they're like, all right, so how much do you weigh? And you're like, oh, I'm like a solid, like, 170 or something. And they're like, no, like how much you actually weigh, motherfucker. And it's like, 190. And they're like, all right, cool. Like get on the left side of the plane, third row. You know what I mean? Like don't,
Start shuffling you around, go downstairs, go below and move some of the luggage around too.
Yeah, like we're not joking. Like this isn't vanity weight. We really need to know like how to counterbalance the plane so you don't crash.
You can write it down and hand it to me and then eat the paper right after, but I just really need to know.
Yeah.
Do you need to be in row 4 or row 7?
Because otherwise you might crash into a mountain and everyone's gonna have a bad time.
Remember, you can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate in These Deserts, and follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. We've got the store at hellofawaytodie.com. All kinds of new stuff, stickers, patches, pins, and what have you on in there. But, Nate, glad to have you back. Glad to be getting back into our normal swing of things. And we'll talk to you all next week.
Yep, have a good one.